Hi everyone, welcome to your first video lecture of the semester. Today we are going to be talking about the river valley civilizations. In particular, we are going to talk about Mesopotamia, which is the first of 4 civilizations that we are going to discuss in this unit. I need you guys to take notes, make sure you fill in the blanks on your handouts. Stop this recording and go back as many times as you need to until you get all of the information and understand it, because we're going to have a quiz on this tomorrow during the first few minutes of class. And if you have any questions, write them down on a separate sheet of paper, and I'll give you some time to ask me questions during tomorrow's class period. So let's get started. What you are looking at here is a map of what is known as the Fertile Crescent. And it's called a crescent because if you notice, it's shaped like one of those French breads that has an arch like that, like a crescent moon. And it's also known as the Fertile Crescent because the area that's between these rivers and around the rivers here is actually very good for agriculture, very good for raising animals because it is great for crops. Mesopotamia is part of the Fertile Crescent, as we just discussed, and it means the land between the 2 rivers. Now, the 2 rivers that they're talking about here are the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. It's located in what would be today Iraq. Southern Mesopotamia is actually very hot and dry, but northern Mesopotamia has very fertile land. Again, that means that it's good for growing crops, because many of the rivers and the streams, and not just those 2 main rivers, it has a lot of tributaries and a lot of streams that keep the land moist and great for agriculture. The land between the rivers is full of wildlife and vegetation, and it was very attractive for settlers. And because of the development of agriculture that we discussed in class a while back, this results in permanent settlements in this area. So ancient Sumer are the first to settle in Mesopotamia. Their agriculture is consisted of wheat, barley, and dates. Dates are a kind of fruit. And they raised animals like sheep, goats, and cattle. They used them for their agriculture, as you can see here. They also used them for shelter or for clothing, and of course they used the animals to eat. Ancient Sumer had a polytheistic religion. That means that they believe in many gods, not just one. They worshipped hundreds of gods actually. And they spent a lot of time trying to make their gods happy because they felt that their gods could either do really, really good things for them, like give them lots of crops, or they can be really, really harsh on them if they were unhappy and send them disease or send them a drought. So they spent a lot of time trying to keep them in good spirits. They worshipped in temples that are called ziggurats, and that's what you see down here. And that is a ziggurat that is kind of shaped like a rectangle and a pyramid in one. There's still some ziggurats in this area that archaeologists have uncovered. Ancient Sumer is known for its great achievements, and what you see here is actually technology. Their inventions include wheels. They were the first, we believe, to put wheels on carts, and they used that for moving things around and eventually for transporting goods and transporting people to far places. And they also are credited with inventing the sail. They were excellent sailors. They are known for having the first written language that we know of, and that's what you see on this tablet down here. It's called cuneiform. It's a system of pictures and symbols. We have found many tablets that contain this cuneiform, and so we believe it's the oldest written language that has ever existed. Sumerians were excellent record keepers. They had scribes that kept excellent records on these kinds of tablets, and a lot of them have been preserved, so we are able to learn a lot about their culture and about their society because of these great records that they kept. The politics in Mesopotamia. Let's talk about that. So their society is divided into 4 classes, basic classes, and they're shaped like a pyramid because there are fewer people on top and a lot of people at the bottom. So at the top you have the priests, and then beneath them you have an upper class. So those are people who have the better paying jobs or who are descendants of the royalty. And then beneath them, you have the lower classes. Here you might find some merchants, farmers, and then underneath that you have slaves, and they're the ones who do a lot of the work that no one wants to do. Their cities are actually called city-states, and you're looking at one down here. That's the city-state of Ur, which is one of the most powerful city-states in the area. And it's a city with a lot of villages that surround it, and it's usually protected by a wall. They are independent. They have their own government and military, but they speak the same languages as other city-states, and they tend to trade with one another. So they still depend on other cities, but for the most part, their own government, their own military. One of the great rulers of Mesopotamia is Hammurabi. He was very powerful. He conquered a lot of land, and he actually introduced Mesopotamia to what we know as the oldest set of written laws, and it's called the Code of Hammurabi. We'll talk more about his codes in class, so keep that in mind for tomorrow. Mesopotamian economy. They had specialized jobs in Mesopotamia. Some people were farmers, there were others that were herders, there were some fishermen, and there were masons. They're the ones who make bricks and who build houses. And then you have potters because they make clay pots to keep all of their food in. And then of course you have merchants. And they're very important because trade was a very big deal in Mesopotamia. They traded food, they traded clothing, they even traded jewelry and wine with other city-states and other civilizations from other parts of the world. They used barley and precious metals for barter. So they didn't have money, but they used these precious metals like maybe gold or bronze as their form of money. Their society allowed only for boys to go to school, and these schools were run by priests. Women were not considered equal to men, and they were not allowed to vote or participate in government. But they did have some rights. They did have the right, for example, to own property, and that's not common in this time period, and as you're going to see when we study other civilizations. So it was kind of a big deal that they could own property. And Babylon actually took over Sumer. Sumer lost power to Babylon, and they grew in power in the south. The city of Babylon was built on top of the Sumerian ruins, and they actually surrounded their cities with walls, very, very big walls, and they had a very large ziggurat at the center of their cities. One of the most famous landmarks in this time period was the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and those were inside of the king's palace, and it was considered one of the 7 wonders of the world because they were so huge and so beautiful. Assyria is going to be growing in power in the north around the same time that Babylon arises, and they are great traders. Their merchants traveled all over the region trading with other civilizations. Their language is different than the Sumerians and the Babylonians. They are more warlike people. They're nomadic warriors. They move around from place to place, conquering all the little cities and villages that they come by. And they eventually conquer and destroy Babylon. The Phoenicians are actually going to be closer to the Mediterranean Sea. They rule the Mediterranean Sea. These are those excellent sailors that I was talking about earlier. They're credited with developing the first alphabet, and our alphabet is actually derived from the Phoenician alphabet. So that's why maybe that word phonics sounds familiar. It comes from the Phoenicians. Alright, so this concludes our lecture for today. I told you it wouldn't be too long. Again, go back and fill out anything that you missed, and if you have any questions, make sure that you bring them to class tomorrow so that we can discuss them. Okay, see you guys tomorrow in class.